SAISD for 17 years. I will readily admit any day of the week that SAISD has my heart. I do a lot of work now in lots of different places, and I'm excited by all of it, and I enjoy all of it, but SAISD has my heart. And so I was really thankful when Christina, who's on the call, you want to say hi, Christina, real quick? I was really thankful when Christina reached out and said, you know, Jen, I know you have SALT. I know you guys have been doing some Zoom meetings. Would you at all be interested in sitting down with Mr. Martinez? And I was like, yeah, that would be amazing. I recognize a lot of people on the call, so thanks for being here. I've learned in my years that our network as educators is usually the people that we currently work with and the people that we used to work with. And that's usually limited to the building that we work in. And my husband, Carlos, who's also on the call tonight, he works primarily with nonprofits on storytelling. And when I left SAISD 3 years ago to join the Key Ideas team, I recognized really quickly that actually, outside of the realm of education, professionals network all the time. Professionals join associations like Chambers of Commerce. They join the Network for Young Professionals, and they just gather over drinks and breakfast and lunch, and they go to town hall meetings, and they go to forums, and it all happens during the school day when the rest of us are on campus with our teachers and students. And I was super jealous of that. And so I decided that it was time to create something like that for educators. Something that wasn't exclusive to just teachers and support staff, but included administrators, and something that also wasn't exclusive to all of our educator friends who work in charter or private schools or in higher education. And so that's what SALT is. We are really inclusive. We don't, if you call yourself an educator, you're in. You get to join SALT. And so we're super excited. I am looking to make sure, Mr. Martinez, are you on the call already? There's too many where I can't.
He is locked out.
Okay, we're working on it right now. Technology, guys, it's kind of ridiculous. Christina, do you want to share anything while we figure that out?
Hi, everyone. Christina Martinez. I'm a SAISD parent of 3 children. Well, 1 just graduated, and I have a 2nd grader going to YWLA primary, and I have, yes, woo, and I have a 10th grader going to Burbank this year. He'll be a Bulldog. And so, but I'm also on the SAISD school board. I've been on the school board for 3 years now, and just wanted to make sure that we had this opportunity to, you know, talk with our superintendent about all the things that are happening. So many things change from week to week, and I know it's a lot of information that's coming at us as a parent. You know, I'm overwhelmed by all of the different things, but then certainly as a policymaker now, having to think about the ramifications of every single decision and how it plays out for families and how it plays out for teachers and how it plays out for all of our support staff. And so, you know, I think one of the things that's been interesting about everything that's happening right now is that, you know, the big thing that we keep hearing, you know, is that in all of the decision making, you don't hear the voice of the teachers, of the people at the school level. And so that's why this was really important for me to hear from you. The superintendent has been, you know, he has his cabinet of people and his staff around him that guide him, and all of them at some point in their career were in the classroom, so they know exactly what you're going through. But I think it was important to just create this space for all of us to sit here and have this conversation. My day job is working for Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Texas, and I do volunteer and family recruitment. And one of the hard things for me has been, you know, our phone never stopped ringing at Big Brothers Big Sisters. We had families calling us throughout the entire pandemic, you know, worried about their children, about the young people. And so I bring that perspective with me as well. I know our families are struggling and having a hard time and wanting to do the right thing for their children. And so, again, just having this space to listen and to hear from our superintendent was really important. And so he got in. So I will thank you guys.
Thank you, Christina. Sorry, Mr. Martinez, you seem to be a very popular person. It's almost like people want to hear from you. How are you today?
I'm good, Jennifer. I mean, I told Christina, I told Trustee Martinez, I said, well, at least there's a lot of people, because I've been trying to come in since 6 o'clock, and it said you reach your maximum 100 participants. I said, that's a lot of people.
We're working on the back end. So for everybody else, if you have friends that are trying to get in and they haven't, we're trying to fix the settings to adjust that. We didn't realize that that was a limitation on our account. I thought I didn't have that. So they're working on it on the back end. But the good news is we're also recording this, and so we will make it available to everybody who registered for tonight so they don't miss any important information. And while we're at it, I will tell you that we have a Google form that we're going to send out to every single person who registered for the call that will capture their thoughts and emails. And then we can, maybe you and I offline can sit down, Mr. Martinez, and just go through anything that we see that we weren't able to capture on the actual call. Okay, so we'll make sure that we get everybody's voice heard today. How are you doing, sir? It's been a crazy tough. First, and I also want to say, I raise my glass to you. This is a glass of actual wine. Cheers. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks for making time. I know I can't even imagine. It's stressful for me because I'm a parent and because I have all of my friends basically are educators. I'm not sure I have any friends that aren't educators these days. And so I understand and recognize how busy you've been and the weight of the decisions that are on your plate. And I know you're a parent too, right? So how are you guys doing? What are you guys working through as a family?
So it's, as you can imagine, it's, we have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. Twice a day, they try to kill each other. And usually the younger, the 6-year-old, who's a girl, is usually the one that wins out. So I'm trying to I'm always consoling my 9-year-old son. And, so literally twice a day, you'll just hear screaming like you won't believe. And I've always known this, but this has confirmed me that kids are not meant to be locked up in homes, number one. Yeah. I've always known that, but now I've tested it out. And then number two, that teachers make us better parents. I honestly believe that the reason that parents can survive is because of schools. And teachers make us better parents. And so I've always felt that, but now it has been confirmed. So, but they're doing okay. They can't wait to get out. I have these 2 little stories that I'll share with you. So one was for my 9-year-old, he loves, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Urban Air that opened up over there at North Star Mall. He loves it. He can go there every single day. And when it got closed, his heart was crushed. He would make me drive up to North Star Mall just so that he could go up to the window and see the sign that it was still closed. So literally, I mean, that was like, when it first happened. Well, guess what? It's open. But my wife will not allow us to go. She just put her foot down. She says, it's not going to happen. It's not safe. Cases are going up. And so literally, whenever we drive by the mall, I have to take a different drive so that he doesn't see the signage that says we're open. Because I don't want him to see it.
Exactly.
So we have that situation. My 6-year-old, who's going into 1st grade next year, she's, we've been reading a lot. And what's really interesting is that, we have these little small books that have all the sight words. And so, I said, I wanted to be sort of smart and said, hey, can I have you read these books for me so that I know you know your sight words? And she's like, oh, Papa, I'm not, those books, those are like from months ago. She's now reading these Dogman books that are chapter books, and she loves it. And just to watch her as she probably gets about 90% of the words, but she'll struggle through the other 10%. Mm-hmm. But just to watch her, and she's reading to me, and then when she reads it twice, and she laughs because it's funny, and then she accentuates every sentence and every exclamation point. And I realized, like, I want every parent to have that feeling. Yeah. When your child is learning the love of literacy and love of reading, I want every one of our parents to have that. And so I feel like, that those 2 stories are literally where we're at. Like my wife is scared to death about our safety because both of my children have respiratory issues. My daughter's been in the hospital twice because of respiratory issues. And so she's scared to death of something happening to them. And so she's not letting me take them to urban air and not letting my son see that the sign that we're open. And then I have my 6-year-old who is learning the love of literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what and so we have to balance those two things, right? Of how do we give students, how do we give families that access to academics that are going to be life-changing for them, but then how do you do it safely, right? And how do you do it safely when most likely children, they want to be in school, they want to see their friends. And so how do you balance those two things? So I feel like those two stories for me give you a sense of my own personal struggles and what as I think about for the district.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for being here. I think it's a really important time for everybody to listen to our leaders and for our leaders to listen to us, and to share those kinds of stories so that we kind of have a unique understanding of each other's perspective. I think we're in the exact same situation. We have 3 kids of our own. You already know this, but I'm going to say it for everybody else. We have a rising senior. He's going to be in 12th grade at Fox Tech High School. We have an entering sophomore who is going to school at Jefferson High School. And we have a 1st grader who's going into 1st grade at the Advanced Learning Academy. And I am legitimately worried. And, they're very different. Obviously, our senior wants to be in school. He wants to have as normal of a senior year as he can. And, Jonathan, our sophomore, is kind of like, as long as I can play baseball, I don't care if I'm in school, out of school, whatever, I just want to play baseball. Like, that's his passion. And Elise, she is like, I'm really bored at home. But she actually has had a lot of anxiety about the virus in general, just worried about where we go and how long we're there and if our hands are washed. And she's 6, and she's carrying this weight of like, I'm not sure I want to see my friends because I don't want to get the virus. It's really kind of heavy. It's really kind of heavy. So I think these conversations are really important. I don't know if you want to take a second to just tell everybody, why did you decide to come and sit with us tonight?
Well, first of all, just know that my staff and I have been working 24 hours a day for the last few weeks, just trying to come up with the best guidance of how we're going to reopen the school year, right? Or how we're going to open the school year. And of course, we're trying to balance the priority of safety with how do we meet the needs of our families. And so, I wanted to come just to be with you, just to first of all hear what, some of the things that's on your minds, because we're trying to gather a lot of information. We've had multiple surveys. We're having multiple meetings with parents. We're having, and so we're about to go into a heavy engagement process with parents and staff again, to give our latest thinking. And so really today was really my hope, and I want to thank Trustee Martinez for letting me know about this event. And really, just again, I want to just hear what's on your mind. We're right now trying to gather as much information as possible to put the best plan together. I'll tell you, my biggest concern, I think we're going to get through this virus. I think we're going to get through this virus. I think we're going to look back at it 6 months from now, a year from now, and we'll all look back and say, my God, that was a crazy period, right? My biggest concern is that the momentum we had going into the spring break was so strong and so positive. And I want to make sure we regain that momentum as we open the new school year. Yeah. And we saw it from, what our academics were looking like, the morale of our teachers, everything was looking very positive. And so my concern is, I don't want us to go backwards. Because the work is just too important to this community and too important to our students. And so like I said, I really, my hope is just to kind of, be able to answer maybe some of your questions and give you maybe a little bit of some thinking of where we're at. But really what I'd love to do is just to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that's a perfect segue. I think that we've done a lot of thinking and talking, and I think we have some big ticket questions that we know are on everybody's mind. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to roll those off. Okay. And then if you're listening and you think my question never got asked, please put it in the chat and we'll try to get to it in a timely manner. And then we're also going to share that Google link for a Google form. So if we don't get to your question and you want to leave some feedback, you'll have an opportunity to do that. Obviously, the most important thing that everybody is thinking about are safety protocols. Like, who's making the decision around are the safety protocols that we're going to employ if we were going to be on campus and it was going to be a face-to-face scenario? Like, what are those? What do we have for personal protection? Do we have enough of it? Where does that money come from if we don't? How do we make sure that we're safe and that our kids are safe? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so so number one, just know that whatever plan is implemented for this new school year, safety by far is the number one priority. And we are following the guidance of the CDC and Metro Health, which are both aligned, by the way. That supersedes anything. And in fact, in many cases, we're even going to be more stringent. So when things are suggested, we're making them required. So for example, so we do have the PPE equipment. In fact, we just received, the state has bought us face masks and face shields for every staff person, and we have those. We're actually buying some additional face masks, face shields for younger students that are very friendly. They're really cute. They're sort of like it's like a hat with a shield on it. That I think is going to be when when we show it to teachers and parents, it's just going to look a lot more, just a lot more friendlier to the children. So we're in the process right now of actually sourcing those through our procurement office. But in terms of equipment, and we've already, we're pre-stocking on all of our cleaning materials. We've also bought some sprayers that we want to work with our teachers on how we can, they're no touch, that we can literally spray everything down during certain times of the day, where literally, it will destroy any germs, and they dry in 45 seconds. So they're very quick. So that part, Jennifer, is actually the part that I feel the most comfortable about. And we have the board, we're submitting a reimbursement from the state for COVID expenses. And those monies are being set aside specifically to make sure that we do not in any way compromise on any safety gear or any safety supplies. So those funds will be in place, and we're ordering them ahead of time.
That's awesome. And while we're thinking about like technical or tactical logistical things, what about furniture? I remember that there was a big push toward more collaborative workspaces, which if we switched out all the furniture from the building to make like foursome tables or triads, then we don't really have enough individual seating to spread kids 6 feet apart. So if there was a need for furniture, how and when would it be supplied?
So what we think is going to probably be a better investment for us is to actually have separators. So what we're looking at right now is every classroom. And so in some cases, we already have the furniture to spread the kids out. We do have in some classrooms where we have tables where they're about 5 feet long. So they're 1 foot too short.
Yeah.
And so what we decided, instead of having, changing the furniture, which is really late in the game to do that, what we prefer to do is if we have to have 2 children at that table, if that's something that we can't avoid, that we would have a separator, like a plexiglass separator that is temporary. And so we're actually right now looking at all of our classrooms that have those situations to be ready for whenever we decide to open up school. So that for us is our strategy. But what we have done is we have actually measured every single classroom. We know how many children we can fit using 6 feet as a social distancing. And we've actually had principals walk through every classroom. And we have all of our other learning spaces that we've also measured, and we've also again, and so those are the rooms right now that we're just preparing to say, okay, do we have furniture that lends itself? If we don't, what are the options? So do we move certain furniture out, or do we set up some separators? Because what the guidance from the CDC is either 6 feet or have a separator. Some kind of separator so that the children can have that protection if you can't achieve the 6 feet consistently.
What about, has there been any conversation about adapting or creating any outdoor learning spaces at the campuses?
Yeah, so basically what we're sharing with our staff is that any outdoor space or any common space should be used in the building as we think about our in-person approach. Because like for example, like extracurriculars, we canceled the strength and conditioning programs, even though we weren't really getting any cases from it, just because we just thought it wasn't safe for the month of July.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we could see, especially leveraging our outdoor spaces for extracurriculars, for just many of our, even some of our classes. So those are things that, again, we're going to ask principals, look at every single learning space you have, because that gives you more opportunities to social distance the students.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think another big worry or big thing on everybody's mind is what happens if someone gets to have to use sick leave days to quarantine. Some people have a bank of sick leave days that rolls over, but others are just starting out or have already used it. Some people want to save it for maternity leave. Like, what happens if I have to be out of school for more than 14 days?
Yeah, so Jennifer, we would look at those individuals case by case, but our goal is not to have our employees worried about their livelihood, whether it's using up their sick days. So here's where it gets a little complicated. If we have an outbreak at a school, we've already set up on our calendar intercession weeks so that we could close the entire school down for 5 days at a time.
Okay.
And then we can make up that time during those intercession weeks. So most likely, you have that scenario, right? That we can make up that time in other days. So really, people might be quarantined, but they're not having to use any days, because we're going to make up those days during a later time of the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then if somebody's seriously sick, again, we're going to be very considerate looking at what their situation is. And again, I will look at things like maybe not penalizing their sick days. I mean, especially because if it's related directly to COVID.
Yeah.
So those are things that I'm very open to. I just don't want to make any hard set rules, because some of these are policy changes. This crisis will be over, but I am going to go case by case. And if I see a situation, we're not going to let one of our employees, we just don't want them to be worried about their livelihood. That's not, we need to get through this together.
Yeah. Do you think that there would be or anything in the line of sight or in the plan that would have SAISD as a COVID testing site, like specifically, so if teachers are worried and they think, oh my gosh, maybe I did get exposed, is there going to be some sort of testing that happens that's provided by the school district?
I would love to, Jennifer. So, I mean, those are going to be some of the conversations that we'll definitely be, continuing to have with the city and the county. They've actually used some of our sites as testing sites. They used Rogers Academy for a short period, and so those are conversations that we're going to be having with the city and county. I think part of the challenge for them right now is they're just trying to figure out what testing will look like over the next few months.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is one of the conversations that, like I said, that we are planning to have, and we do have, for example, a clinic at Tafoya. We're hoping to open up in a few months a clinic at Davis. And I'm talking to University Health about potentially having those sites have testing available. They'd be available for our staff and for our parents. And so those are things that I would like to have in place. I can tell you right now that the city and the county and the state are still in flux right now. So they're not ready to do that yet. But like I said, there's already been examples when our district was used, some of our schools were used as testing sites over the summer or over the spring break. And so I'm very open to those ideas. The challenge is how do we do it and make sure that anybody who's working in those buildings is safe, right? That we can separate it.
Yeah. What about any guidance around special ed or special ed resources? Some of these questions are coming to me from the chat. So yeah, but so, like somebody had to switch, usually students switch classes if they're going to need additional support from like a resource teacher. So what about like those transition times when, even if it's not special ed, are we going to be rotating classes or teachers?
So let me sort of back up a little bit. So let me tell you what we're thinking right now, our latest thinking. And this is literally our latest thinking as of today at 6 p.m. And remember, we get guidance on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So let me just set some context for you of what's happening. So first of all, our state is saying schools have to be open. If you want to qualify for funding, schools have to be open. And they have to be open for in-person instruction 5 days a week. So that's the rule. And so that we don't control that. Well, we've done a lot of advocacy with the state and with the commissioner. I mean, I've been in several conversations, even during our July 4th break, I was having conversations in small groups with the commissioner, and we were able to get some wins. So let me tell you the wins we got. So one was the first 3 weeks of school, I do have, as the superintendent, I have the authority to limit who comes in our, just with the limit, restrict any of the in-person instruction. So for example, I have the authority to go 100% remote the first 3 weeks of school.
Yeah.
So now after 3 weeks of school, I can't do that anymore, right? So that's something that's in play right now that as I'm working with our staff is we're saying, okay, you know, as we think about our plan, do we put that in motion, right? Do we limit, either severely limit or even just go 100% remote just for the first 3 weeks so that we can figure these things out? And this is the kind of feedback that we're getting. And so again, so those are the kind of, you know, things that we're asking, and these are the questions we're asking even this week. The second is that we already have an earnings session calendar. One of the questions that we're thinking about is, you know, if we do that, should we look at in-person instruction starting on a certain date? So it has to happen the fourth week, but is there an advantage to doing it for in-person instruction to start after Labor Day?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of a question, right? And so right now, starting our first day of school is August 10th.
Right.
So 3 weeks into it gets us into the week before Labor Day. And so one of the questions that we're sort of thinking about, and we have a board meeting Monday night, and this is one of the conversations we're going to have even publicly with the board, is do we look at our calendar and shift it one more time so that in-person instruction maybe can start for all families who requested after Labor Day. Now, so those are the conversations. So the other thing that I want to share with you to give you context is we've done surveys with staff and parents. Right now, with about 15,000 responses, which is almost 20% of our families, which, you know, is low, but I'll tell you, in terms of surveys, 20% is a good sample size. It's actually very valid in terms of what we think we're getting. We're seeing right now 31% of our parents want to send their children for in-person instruction. 31%. 40% are undecided.
Wow.
30% are want to do it remote. So those are the pies, right? So what we want to be able to do in the first 9 weeks of school, and this is the message, this is what we shared with our principals this morning, is we like to have less than 50% of our children come in person.
Got it.
So if we can achieve that, I can do multiple things. And these are some of the questions that you guys have, right? I can accommodate teachers who may be at risk health-wise to come in person. So I can have a team of teachers working remote and a team of teachers working in person and accommodate those teachers that they might themselves be personally at risk, or they might have family that's personally at risk in their household, right? Yeah. So that's one goal. I can accommodate, you know, those students who want to come in person, which right now the law forces me to, but in smaller groups so that we can social distance everybody.
Right.
And then at the same time, I can also, you know, we will commit to our remote families who are working remote, who are students who are studying remote, that we're going to have a high quality program for them. So, because we have the tools in place now, we're putting them in place now. And we did surveys with our teachers and parents, and we got very positive feedback about our remote learning plan that happened right after spring break. So we can build from that. So that's the context I want to just share with you. Those are the things we're looking at in the variables.
Thank you.
For special ed, you know, we would accommodate those families who want to bring in their children in person. What we would do is really limit the movement of teachers. The only place we may not be able to do that as much is in secondary. So we would try to keep the kids in the same classroom. And then for our secondary students, we would just limit the number of changes that they change class. So in other words, instead of changing classes 7 times a day, they might change twice or 3 times. Because, for example, science labs are science labs, right? Like you can't really replicate a science lab in a general classroom. But for the core classrooms, we might be able to limit the number of shifts. Like they might have, you know, 2 or 3 subjects in the same classroom and then shift for another room for another. Because we do have fine art rooms, we do have science labs. And those are things that we still want our children to take advantage of, but we keep them in cohorts.
Yeah.
So we keep the same team of teachers, the same cohort of kids. So if we have an outbreak, we can trace it back to those children and those individuals. Does that make sense? So those are the kind of procedures we're looking at as we open up in person in our schools.
Thank you. I have one other question just about liability of teachers. Like, I've had some conversations with teachers who are worried about whether or not COVID would spread during the school day. And, you know, this is always one of those things that gets really tricky, because when it happens to your student, then the mama bear comes out, right? And you're like, how did this happen? What could have been done to prevent this from happening? Whose fault is it? Is it you weren't watching closely enough and everybody took their mask off during the day? Were you not being watchful at outdoor time? Like, how do we kind of manage the liability if somebody were to get sick at school?
Yeah, and so this goes back to the safety procedures. So one of the reasons why it's tempting for me to start off the school year remote for at least the first 3 weeks is to train all of our teachers. It gives us the opportunity for those parents who choose in person, we can actually bring them in and say, look, here's how things are gonna work. Because, you know, for us, August 10th is right around the corner. And so as we think about that, you know, the more time I have to implement the procedures, train our staff, which will be mandatory for all staff, parents who choose in person, we say, okay, again, I have to grant you your choice. I need you to come in during those first 3 weeks of school, and let's, you know, I want you to see what we're doing, see the signage. And so part of that, Jennifer, for me, that's why, you know, we're looking at, you know, how do we open up, you know, we have to open up, but how do we open up in a safe way and use the tools that we've been able to get, you know, through our advocacy work so that we can do it safely. So part of our thinking right now, there's no guarantees, but if we at least can do those, can put in those kind of procedures, I think we have a better chance of success. And then of course, there's gonna be protocols for reporting. So whenever we have a case, we're gonna be, you know, we're gonna be really clear with our families. Here's what we're gonna be, you know, we're gonna be sharing with you. This happened in this classroom. This is what we know. There's some limitations because there's privacy laws that we have to follow. But we'll say, you know, here's the process, and there'll be a process for, you know, is it like, okay, you know, this situation happened. It looks like it was isolated. We don't have to close the classroom. This situation happened. We have to actually close the classroom. This situation happened. We actually have to close the school. Yeah. So we'll have different protocols for each one. All of those are with Metro Health. So right now, we don't do anything. Whenever we have a case in our district, and we have had cases since the break, mostly all through community, not through any activities at schools. We work with Metro Health, and Metro Health literally guides us. They walk us through the whole process of, here's what you need to do. Staff will be quarantined for this number of days. Here, I mean, and we literally, and we're still following that. So those are the procedures that we're gonna have in place for both staff and parents. Again, staff will be trained on all of this, by the way. This will be mandatory. You know, this will happen as we're starting the school year.
Yeah. What about, so there, it sounds like there are going to be some cases where there will be some teachers who are starting online versus some teachers who are going to be reporting on campus. Is that kind of, am I understanding it correctly?
What I would like to do is my goal is to have a plan that accommodates both. Okay. That can accommodate teachers a team that works remote and a team that works in person. Because, and again, you know, like I said, with everything that I said earlier about I have flexibility for the first 3 weeks to help us to kind of implement it all.
Yeah. So how do we decide, how is there a protocol or procedure that you're working on for like who starts online and who starts on campus, or like, will it rotate or?
So first of all, you know, the first thing we're going to want to know is, and we've done surveys, you know, with our teachers, about a third of our teachers right now are sharing with us that they're very concerned about coming in person. We didn't ask them the reasons. So part of it for us, it's really going to be principals having conversations with staff. And so think of it this way, right? And here's my challenge, and this is where I am a little frustrated with the state's guidance. Because the state is telling me that I have to open up schools for any child who wants to come in, I can't choose the children, right? So understand that component. So for example, you know, I can be at JT Brack,
Right.
And a certain group of families say, we want to come in person. And it's you know, and imagine X amount in fourth grade, Y amount in fifth grade. Now, GT Brack is a big school. The good news there is we have multiple sections for every grade. So at that point, we say, okay, let's just say in a perfect world, less than half of the fifth graders want to come in. I could see our principal going to the fifth grade team and saying, okay, here's what the families are choosing. We need a team of teachers to support our in-person instruction. We need a team of teachers, and you're going to get a ton of support, by the way, to support our remote learning students.
Yeah.
Here's my plan for fifth grade,
Yeah.
right? And then it goes to fourth grade, and then it goes. So imagine, and so it's a huge. Somebody referred it to as like a huge matching game. It really is. And here's where I'm really going to rely. And I know Ms. McLaren is on. I can see her little box, and I think I saw Brian from Lamar, you know, a little earlier. At least I saw him in the chat. I mean, here's where we're really going to count on our principals who know our teachers the best, right? I mean, for me, I'm all about problem solving at the closest, who's ever closest to that problem. And so for me, it's principals talking to families, helping them understand the procedures, having them make their choices. Principals talking with staff and saying, here's what our parents are saying. Here's the team that we have. And let's look at, you know, again, you know, strengths. Let's look at, again, who has concerns around health, who's at risk. I mean, let's be sensitive to those concerns. And again, really, and the goal is really, again, I don't want our staff to be fearing for their health. I don't want them fearing for their livelihood. And I also want to be able to provide the services that the families want. And so it's a huge, huge challenge, but I feel like if we work with our parents and our teachers and our principals, I think we can pull it off.
Yeah. Do you anticipate schools working together to try to balance each other out? Like if one school has just a more than usual amount of parents who want to be in person, or more than usual amount of parents who want their student to be remote, are schools going to have the flexibility to say like, okay, let's balance this out a little bit?
Well, here's the great thing. So first of all, for the remote, for the students learning remote, we're going to leverage all of our expert teachers. So imagine, you know, we have all of our first grade teachers, all of our second grade teachers. So leveraging their expertise, and we're actually going to have, we created a digital playground where we got a couple 100,000 hits, you know, and we had our master teachers and expert teachers really help set that up. And then we invited every other teacher to say, build on it, right? Build on it, because we want to empower our teachers. And we saw amazing creativity. So what I want to do is build on that with the remote learning plan and say, okay, let's really unleash the creativity of our teachers and really have them work together. And so Ms. Salzman, who I just feel, you know, I just have a lot of, you know, I'm very proud of having Ms. Salzman as part of our team. I mean, she is one of the best chief academic officers I've seen in the country. And she's building a team around them. And we have academic coaches and specialists that are ready to support our teachers. So that to me on the remote plan, I could see schools collaborating. I could see a lot of support from our central team. And so that teachers will not be alone at all in any of the remote learning lesson plans. It literally will be a team, everybody working together.
Yeah.
On the in-person, here's where it gets tricky, right? Where you have, you know, again, you know, just kids don't come in perfect packages. What we're allowed to do as a district is, say, for example, I have two schools, and there's just a large number of parents who want to come in person at one grade level or the other. We either have the ability to share teachers among the school, because remember, by the way, this is all for the first 9 weeks, so I should have said that. Any choice that parents make, we got the commissioner to agree that it would be in place for one grading period. And then after each grading period, I can relook at the situation. So for example, and for us, it's 9 weeks. So every 9 weeks, we'll relook at the situation and say, okay, is it safe? Do we have more families that want to come in person? Can we accommodate that? Or is it the opposite? Is it less safe? And we're going to be asking families to consider going remote because, again, we're having outbreaks, right, at school. So it gives us the ability to pivot. But definitely, Jennifer, schools will be able to partner together, because I have some schools that are very small and they might not have enough teachers. So we might ask schools to kind of collaborate together. And it might mean, you know, I'm hoping it doesn't get to this, But if I have a school where a large percentage of families want to come in person, let's say like 70% want to come in person,
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable bringing in that many children in any school. I might tell the parents, look, I don't, I have to accommodate your request, but I don't have to do it at this school. I
Right.
have slots at all these other schools that are below 50% that I'm going to ask you if you would consider within the same neighborhood, because right, we're big enough that we can do that. I'm hoping it doesn't get to that, but we just don't know. I mean, part of the work we have to do between now and when we start school is getting those requests from parents. Like we call them declarations. We're going to be providing our principals tomorrow a toolkit that they'll roll out to parents, where parents will declare whether they want to come in person, remote, or if they're in the where if they don't mind either one or the other. In other words, they can go for either one, just based on what we feel is best for them.
Thank you. Thanks. I saw a couple of interesting ideas. One is around staff burnout, and I'm wondering, like a lot of people, what are the mechanisms we can put in place to avoid staff burnout, or what are the mental health resources that are accessible to teachers, like the actual staff in schools? What do they have access to, and how can they be supported as we navigate like bringing so many students back, being in community with each other? I mean, I'm nervous because we're sitting here at a table like 7 feet apart, and I'm like, wash your hands, people, put your mask on as they're handing me the notes, right? So like, what are the mental health resources that we can offer to teachers so that they feel like, okay, I'm able to accomplish this task?
We have, of course, a team of counselors and social workers that not only provide services to our students, but also are there for our teachers. I'm very open to ideas, folks, and this is an area that, I've been very proud of our district and the work we're doing with social and emotional learning. They're our most popular training sessions. And I feel that, social and emotional learning is not only for our students, but it's also for us as adults.
Yeah.
And Ms. Salzman is very, very much, a supporter of that. She really sees social and emotional learning on an equal footing with our core academics. And so I think, like I said, we're very open to ideas and suggestions of how do we support our teachers more. I think one way for sure is using this opportunity to create learning networks across our district.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what's happening right now with technology is that we have the ability to, first of all, do training with 3,200 teachers and put it up with very high quality, but also even create learning networks among teachers, because one of the challenges with our buildings is that teachers don't really get to visit each other. They don't get to really work together.
Yeah, you're right.
Across buildings. And so I really would love opportunities like this, and I would love it if it came from teachers and our principals around how do we create learning networks across buildings, with teachers of the same grade level, the same content area, so that we can really learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I think our digital, lessons, I mean, that's one of the beauties, is that it doesn't have to be, it can be ideas of all of our teachers coming together and that all of us can leverage. And we've never had a chance to take advantage of that like the way we do now. So again, but I'm really open to ideas and suggestions. This is an area that we want to make investments in. And like I said, right now for me, my number one goal is how do I keep up the morale of our teachers? Because the morale has been strong and the momentum has been so strong.
For sure. And I that we're getting close to being at our time limit. And actually that's a perfect segue, because my question was going to be, how do we keep the educator voice ever present? How do we make sure that the policies that are happening both at the state level but also at the local level include the voice of the people? I really appreciated your comment earlier when you said that the best problem-solving solutions come from the people closest to the problem. I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't even understand how people can try to solve problems that they aren't close to. And usually when you try to work a solution, somebody else's solution is when you get the most frustrated and the most burnt out. So how do we make sure that happens regularly?
So Ms. Salzman is going to have a teacher advisory group as well as a principal advisory group. So first of all, know you have that opportunity.
Is it voluntary or will they be selected?
So it's a good question, and maybe that's an email, Jennifer, to follow up with Ms. Salzman. But she is planning to have a teacher advisory group that she's already. There's a group of teachers already that are starting to work with her, but I don't think it's restricted in any way. And this will be a group, by the way, that she will be consulting with throughout the whole period. So now, folks, that is something that we want to really build on.
Yeah.
So that structure is being put in place, and we also have a principal advisory group as well. So that's something, because we don't want to make these decisions in isolation.
Right.
And it's also a way for us to just find out how things are going, just to check in and say, okay, is there some adjustments we got to make to this plan, because we got to be nimble and we got to be flexible.
Yeah. Is there, I want to open the floor up in these last few minutes before we close out for people to be able to ask a question, but I'm gonna pose the question, okay? And if somebody would like to answer, we're gonna ask, there's a lot of people on this call, so for them to raise their hand and wait to be called on, and then when we call on you, we'll ask you to state your question for state your answer from Mr. Martinez, and then give you a chance to just kind of comment on that. So the question that we wanted to end the night with, and I also want to say, like, just if you have, I know there were a lot of questions happening in the chat. We're recording this, so we will make sure we write them all down and we have some sort of follow-up, or at least we pass those questions along. But for right now, the question on the table is, what do you wish teachers and educators on the call that Mr. Martinez knew about teaching in SAISD right now? So if you have an answer to that, we're asking you to raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand, you can just say, pick me in the comments. What do you wish Mr. Martinez knew right now? And while we're waiting for a raised hand, I will say, like, one thing I always will advocate for is paying teachers for their time or for picking their brain. So if there's any opportunity for those teacher advisory groups to have a stipend or something, that would be, I'm sure everybody would appreciate it.
So one of the things that we've also done, just for our teachers to know, is part of our intersession schedule, some of the resources that we're putting aside are in case we need to just pay teachers more stipends to be able to do actually additional work on the digital lesson plans, bringing children during the intersession period, because again, anything that we ask teachers to do, we want to make sure we compensate teachers appropriately.
Well, thank you, Ms. Martinez. Ms. Borrell, I think, has her hand raised and would like to answer the question, what do you wish Mr. Martinez knew about teaching in SAISD right now?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to let Mr. Martinez know that teaching in SAISD right now seems like a very scary proposition. And as much as you want to tell me that you're keeping my safety and my student safety and the staff safety in mind, it would have been totally amazing, and we would have stood 100% behind you if you had said right off the bat, since I have the opportunity to do online learning 100% for the first 3 weeks, let's do that now. If you had made that choice, and if you had said, you know what, teachers, we need to get together so that we can make this online learning the best that we can possibly make it, that we could start doing that now. And I think 100% of the teachers would have been behind you. I think that I really don't need lip service. I need action. I need professional grade PPE, because the PPE that was provided to us at the end of the school year last year was not adequate at all. It was insufficient. It was not what is, and that was at a point where the cases were much, much lower than they are now. So I just need you to know that in order for the teacher morale and staff morale and parent morale and even student morale to go up, it to really have action. I don't want any more speeches. I don't want any more words. I need action, because I am ready to teach, but I'm not ready to die to do my job.
Thank you. Yeah. Kristen Cozart, did you have your hand raised?
I did. Good evening, Mr. Martinez. First off, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to dialogue with you on this particular season in our careers. From a teacher standpoint, you know, we're conflicted. Personally, I'm terrified to return to the classroom. I have an immunosuppressed parent that lives with me. So the thought of being in the petri dish that is the school is really a scary idea. But also, I miss my students. I love my students. I want them to have the best possible education that they can get. But as the previous speaker said, at what cost, right? And without teachers, there is no education. We are the engine that drives this train. And so I just want to ask, implore that we move forward with that thought, and know that there's a lot of emotion behind this. I'm sure you can hear my voice cracking, but and that we're putting our trust in you to make the best decisions for teachers and staff and students. And you know, we hope the safest decision is made.
Thank you. Well, we hope that everybody else has the opportunity to complete the Google survey. We'll follow up with the questions that are in the chat. I switched to red wine. It seems appropriate at this moment. Mr. Martinez, you know, when I was a teacher, I felt the weight of my classroom on my shoulders, and I felt the responsibility of it. And when I became a principal, it was 100-fold the weight of responsibility that I felt and the burden that I carried. And I know that as a teacher, you know, there were many stories of my individual students that I carried with me. I carried them home with me. I taught with them in my head, and it was not an easy job. And when I became the principal, it was like 1,000 times harder, because then I wasn't carrying just student stories, I was carrying staff stories too. And there are lots of things that staff members, I used to joke that if I ever wrote a book, it would be called Teachers Are People, because as many issues and struggles that our students bring into the schoolhouse, our teachers bring in just as many. They have elderly parents or aging parents or sick children or health issues of their own, or divorces or hard breakups or you know, they're people just like our students are. And it was not easy leading a school. It was rewarding, but it was not easy. And so I just want to acknowledge that even in my own understanding of what you must be facing every day, I get that it's not an easy spot that you're in. And I appreciate that it's you in it and not me. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you want to add before we close the night out?
No, just, first of all, thank you for the feedback. These are tough decisions, and know that, and I know I would say this for Trustee Martinez and the other trustees, when we say that safety is our top priority, it really is. We do not want our teachers to be worried about their health or about their livelihood. This is a crisis, and what we don't want is, we're going to get through this, whether it's 6 months from now or a year from now. And so know that, safety is our number one concern. I also have to ensure, though, that any decisions that we make today don't have lasting impacts on both our staff or our students. Yeah. And so know that, when I mentioned the flexibility we have for the first 3 weeks, this is something I'm going to consult with our board. Know that I plan to use that. So again, the reason I mentioned those comments I made earlier were to share with you the tools that we have in place that we've been able to get, at least with our advocacy with TEA. And like I said, the only thing I just want to make sure is that I'm always listening to parent voice, because for so many of our families, they don't have the privilege to be able to work from home. Some of them don't even have jobs anymore. And so I just want to make sure that I don't forget about, because I think the reason that we have gotten our success that we have so far and what we are projecting for the last school year was because our teachers and our staff have become student focused. And I can't say that that was the case 5 years ago. And so know that, when, as I'm asking you to be student focused, I got to take care of you. So I know that that is a big part of my job, so that you can focus on your students. And so know that we're going to be looking at these flexibilities that we do have when we start the year, and I'm going to leverage them fully. I also made a mental note to make sure that for those teachers who do choose and want to be who are going to be in person with our kids, that they have high grade PPE equipment. I do not want our staff to feel any kind of fear that they have substandard equipment and therefore they're putting themselves at risk. So know that, those are things that I can control. But just know that the biggest challenge I have is that there's a lot of advocacy for keeping things they were during the spring break period, where everybody was able to work from home, and that might have been a nice, that might have been nice for our staff. I will tell you, for many of our families, it didn't work, and it wasn't because of our work. They actually were happy with the instruction and the lesson plans we had, but for so many of our children, they just don't have good living conditions.
Yeah.
And I want to be very sensitive to that, because I want to be a realist. It's very different when children, are learning from a safe home where they have air conditioning, where they have privacy. Folks, that is a very small percentage of our children. The vast majority of our children do not live in good living conditions. And so I cannot forget that, because that has been what has plagued our community for decades. It's the inequities and the racism, the segregation. And guess what? It's playing out more now than ever before. So know that, again, look, I know my job. My job is to take care of my teachers, okay? So I know my job because I want you to be able to focus on our students. And so I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make sure that our teachers are feeling comfortable and our principals are feeling comfortable about the work we're doing, as well as our other staff, because I need you to take care of our students, because for me, they're like my children. I wanna know that whether it's remote or in person, that they're getting a fighting shot. I don't know if you guys have seen Hamilton now that it's on Disney.
Yes.
I don't want our kids to lose their shot. I really don't. I want our kids, because the pandemic is going to pass us by, but the ramifications could be so long lasting, and these children need a shot. They deserve a shot.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I love that. I loved Hamilton. And the other song that just keeps ringing in my ears is that the eyes of history are on us. Like, we have an opportunity to do things differently, to behave differently, and to be different. And that encompasses more than just the pandemic that we're facing, but also the injustices that have outlasted any pandemic that's ever happened in our history. And so I think, and this has only highlighted those injustices. And so I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to spend it with us. And I know you have another event coming up tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to be giving, just more guidance, and we're actually going to share our documents with you. So we'll actually be able to show you all of it's a 50-page document. So I'm just warning you, our principals got to see it this morning. We actually presented it to the Alliance also, so we spent a good number of hours so they could kind of look at everything in detail. And generally, we got very positive feedback. So I'll just share with you that we want to share this document with you tomorrow. So Ms. Salzman and I will be doing a live stream tomorrow, just so you can see the guidelines. And then, like I said, I'm going to bring up this conversation about leveraging our flexibility for the first 3 weeks of school. Again, I'm even going to have a conversation with our board on Monday about even our calendar to make sure that it's set up optimally to protect our staff and our students. So know that these are not just words. I mean, these are actions that are going to go, that are going to be in place this week. But like I said, I need to make sure that I give you all the information, because right now there's just, I just need to make sure you have that information so you can see what we're thinking. And I believe, and I have faith that when you see the information, you'll see that we are trying to look out both for our staff and our students. It's just tricky. We get new guidance all the time, and so I'm hoping that things are stable for a while.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your attention to all of those things even as they change, and for keeping everybody in the loop. SALT has an upcoming event too that we want to let everybody know about. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Martinez, I'm going to share my screen so we can talk a little bit about the SALT event that's coming up. So we have, do you want to come? Jenny's going to actually go through what we have going on with SALT. So I'm going to walk away now.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you again to Superintendent Martinez. And something really resonated to me right now. You said, I know my job. My job is putting teachers first, and I feel like SALT puts teachers first. So if you are into this type of event, networking, elevating your teacher voice, and celebrating the work that we're doing in San Antonio, we have an event that kind of aligns with the work that we're doing. And so our event is with Simran on Friday afternoon. It's from 3 to 5. You can read all the details about it on our website at saltcollective.io. Veronica, can you share the link onto the chat? So Veronica is going to share the link to the event in the chat. And it's really based around kind of ending what we're doing, how this pandemic has really polarized us and really has highlighted the segregation, both economic, racial, spiritual, all the segregation that we have and the dehumanization that we have within our society, and how to address it as teachers. So that event is happening Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. You can get, if you are a current SALT member, this event is free. And so I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about a SALT membership. Our SALT membership calendar runs like a school year. And so we go from July to July. And it's usually $100 for the whole school year. It involves, we have a semester book club, we have monthly networking, we have Fiesta de Maestras, one of our big events, we have Christmas brunch, and every single event we have lots of good drinks. It's also for educational leaders like Mr. Martinez. I'm also a school leader, and then nonprofit leaders and educational leaders in our community are also. So if you want to learn more about how to become a SALT member, that's also on our website. So this event is free for SALT members. If you want to become a SALT member and attend an event like the one we had tonight, or their upcoming school year as well, we're doing an early bird special for $50. So make sure that you click the link, and Veronica is sharing those in our chat. And if you're a current SALT member, you can attend this event for free. If you would like to just attend this event to kind of get a feel for the work that we do and not commit to membership, this event will be $15. So it's Friday from 3 to 5. And it's $15 if you're not a SALT member. If you're a SALT member, make sure you register and hit member. And if we're gonna hang out, if you guys have any questions regarding San Antonio leaders and teachers and kind of what we're about and the work that we're doing here in San Antonio, we'll hang out if you guys have any questions. We don't want to take any more of your evening, so we appreciate all of y'all being here. Mr. Martinez, thank you so much for your time and for your insight and for your leadership during this time. SALT appreciates you so much, and we'll hang out for a little bit longer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody has any questions? You're welcome, Teresa. You're welcome, guys. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everyone. Yay, Gladys, you are so welcome. We are so excited to have you here tonight. Thank you, Ms. Santiago Rosa. Thank you, Ms. Poruel. Oh, my woo is out of control all the time. Oh. Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Thank you, Ms.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Antonia Villarreal. I work in a William Hyman. I work in volunteer on the campus. When the back open up the school, because some teacher is acting, or when they have to go back to have to wear the mask, or
Antonia, that's a principal-based decision. So I don't know when they're letting teachers onto the campus. So I would reach out to, you said Woodlawn Hills, correct?
Yeah, okay.
I will reach out to the campus principal and see when you're going to be able to set up classrooms or what that's going to look like, especially since we're going to give parents the option to do remote learning and some are going to be coming in.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Esparza.
Mantienen.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Rachel Jackson. Thank you, Jacqueline Mendez. Thank you, David. I hope you guys had a good time. Thank you, Jacqueline Mendez.
Is the video going to be available somewhere?
Yes. So if you registered for the event, we'll send the recording via email. Only if you register for the event, though. I guess you guys can share after that. And don't forget,
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Martinez is meeting with SCISD employees tomorrow at 11 a.m. You received a link in your email. So if you need more specifics, go ahead and check your email, and he sent a link out that way. Thank you, Rocio. Thank you, Jessica, Dominique, Ankita, thank you. If you guys have any SALT questions regarding membership, events, we're here to answer all your questions. Thank you, Rocio. Thank you, Ms. De Leon. We hope you join SALT. If you're not already a member, please join us. Thank you so much, Cristina Martinez. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sure did left. Thank you, Scott. Scott, we miss you. We miss your face.
Yeah, I just want to say great job. What a great turnout. It's awesome.
Thanks, Delia.
Yes, and then I hope to get a copy of those questions also, just so that we can push them up in case they haven't been addressed. That would be great, because there were some incredible questions on there.
Yeah.
I'm sending them right now.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening. What's that?
He's downloading the chat and sending it all.
Beautiful. Y'all have some rest.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye, Micah. Love you.
Bye, Michael. Love you.
Okay, I'm going to end it now. If anybody has any final words, I'm going to go ahead and leave. Bye, Sheila. I can leave.
Okay, but you can end it.
There's one more person on there. Bye, Sheila.